Blessed Monday to you. I'm Jerry Usher along with Debbie Georgiani and the show team at Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is the show where we like to encourage you not only to participate, but really to kind of take the steering wheel and drive the show in whatever direction you want. And Debbie will be presenting a topic for our listeners here in a moment. Just want to mention, though, let's all pray in a special way today. I mean, today is it's a very important day. It's a tragic day, if you will. Today is actually the 45th anniversary of the Supreme Court decision Roe versus Wade, quote-unquote legalizing abortion across the United States, that 7-2 decision. Again, 45 years ago today. Of course, we had the March for Life on Friday and a lot of different pro-life events around the country, Debbie, but it's still a day that weighs heavy on our nation's soul, on our nation's conscience, and we really need to repent and try and turn that whole thing around.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Big, huge turnout for the March for Life. So that was very encouraging. And the homily this weekend, Jerry, the pastor at the church that we went to, Marty and I, his homily was all about how we want things to be rectified and fixed right away. And our job is to just participate with God and cooperate with God and to just do what we can and let God take care of it in His timing and in His way and in His plan. And it was all about, it was all centered around abortion and March for Life and the whole entire endeavor of trying to get people aware that it's horrible what happens. And so he really made us all walk out of the church realizing that we can just do our part prayerfully and do what we can, and the rest is of course up to God. So that left me with a good feeling this weekend because it's very frustrating. Everybody wants to fix it. Well, speaking on that, so let's transition to today's topic because that kind of goes nicely into today's topic that we're going to put out for you today, dear Take Two family, and you're going to take it away. We know you are because Jerry and I both have a lot to say about this, but we want to hear from you. We titled the show, "Give Yourself a Break." Are you too critical of yourself and others? We're talking about being, overly judgmental, critical. You're always finding fault in yourself or in others. It's very hard for you sometimes to find the redeeming value, the good qualities, but you can zero in on those things that are just going wrong. Does that maybe sound a little bit like you, or sometimes you fall into that trap, or others are critical of you? We want to hear your take on this because it's very important, and it definitely corresponds with our spirituality and our maturity in our faith. So here's the number. Dial in, share about if you're too critical about yourself and of others. Now, we're not going to, we don't want to call you out on anything and, say, hey, that's terrible. We're all that way. I mean, it's very easy to pick out the things that are going wrong in others. It's very easy. We have scripture passages that talk about that. 1-800-585-9396. That's the number. Phone lines are open. Go, dial now and get in on the show. What do you think, Jerry? Do you think we're too critical of ourselves sometimes?
Sometimes we are. Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny, the timing of this topic. I've been on, as you know, Debbie, I've been on a kick lately of making homemade hot sauces. I go on these kicks that I get onto, and I made a few batches, and I was texting a friend the other day, and I said, the first one I tried just didn't work out, and I ended up down the sink. And he texted back and he goes, maybe you're too critical of yourself. And I said, no, not in this case. This was actually awful. But, I want to hear from anybody. If you, I know that in my life, Debbie, I've kind of carried with me sometimes the voices, of people who have been critical of me in the past. And then, maybe when I make a blunder or do something wrong or something, I tend to kind of jump all over myself, or at least I have. I'm trying not to do that so much anymore. So I'd like to hear from anybody who maybe feels like you sort of catch yourself, you maybe let others off the hook a little bit easier and aren't critical of others, but you have a little tougher time when it comes to, seeing those little faults and failings in yourself, and you kind of, jump all over yourself. We need to be a little bit more mindful of our own worth and dignity, I think.
So you think a little perfectionism is coming into play there?
Perhaps, yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually, I have the same kind of issue, and I had many priests tell me that that's actually a real curse to have. is to strive to be a perfectionist. And because it's like virtually impossible. I mean, when can you ever really say that anything is 100% perfect, or done just perfectly? I guess you could, in some instances. But for the most part, life is messy. And it's very hard to live up to that kind of standard. So do you hold yourself to that? Do you hold others to that? We're talking about being critical today. We're really going to get really frank about this, real raw about this, and really see where we can kind of improve our ways, maybe be more tactful, more charitable to others and to ourselves. So we're asking that question today. Are you too critical of yourself and of others? Here's the number to dial, 1-800-585-9396. Don't wait till the last minute, because Jerry and I absolutely cannot stand when we leave folks on the line. It's one of the things that we struggle with all the time. So be the first one in, 1-800-585-9396.
Yeah, and ironically or providentially, Debbie, on earlier a couple hours ago on EWTN Radio, More to Life, Greg and Lisa Popchak actually, and folks, we don't coordinate topics or look over each other's shoulders or anything, but they did a similar topic on managing criticism and critical people, how to do that gracefully, and so. Let us know if you think others are too critical of you, and maybe that starts to resonate in your mind and heart, and then you start to think maybe negative thoughts about yourself. Mm-hmm. But here also, how do we find a balance between, we talk on this show, Debbie, all the time about taking a fresh look at ourselves. Right. And the church puts out before us an examination of conscience. So, what is a healthy form of self-criticism, and how do we not get stuck in that place where we find out, some areas where we need to work on in our lives, but do it in a healthy, actually positive, joyful way in order to make ourselves the best versions that we can be. So, I think sometimes, we can dwell on that negative that you were talking about, but really a little bit of self-criticism can be a positive, healthy thing.
Yeah, if it motivates you to be, like you said, to be the best version of yourself. I love that. That's a Matthew Kelly saying, be the best version of yourself, and that is very true. But if it keeps you down, if it is demoralizing in any way, then that's not productive. And we want to talk about how that relates to your spirituality. Phone lines are lighting up. There's still an open phone line for you. Jump on. You drive the show. 1-800-585-9396. This is your show, Take Two, with Jerry and Debbie, and we'll be right back, going right to the phones.
Dr. Greg Popchak.
We want listeners to see that God has a unique and unrepeatable plan for their lives, and how to rejoice in the work God is doing in their hearts and in their homes.
The leading Catholic voices are on EWTN Radio.
Dr. Ray Guarendi.
And I look at myself in the mirror and I think, well, where's the young guy? Where'd he go? What's wrong with this mirror, honey? My temptation is to focus on what I've lost. But as I think back on it, in my youth, I did not ponder the stuff of faith like I do now. But what I've gained is, I believe, a closer relationship with Christ.
The Doctor is in with Ray Guarendi. Weekdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
Carry EWTN with you everywhere when you download the EWTN app. You can enjoy EWTN TV and radio live streams, shows on demand, prayers and devotionals, and the latest Catholic news. Visit EWTNapps.com today.
The Reason for Our Hope with Father Larry Richards.
When I was in the Grand Canyon, I did an ecumenical ministry there, and I remember going out into the woods, and I used to always done a holy hour, but I couldn't do a holy hour in the Grand Canyon because there was no Eucharist. And so I'd go out and do my holy hour into the desert. I remember when I was talking to God, and I remember starting to cry, and I says, Lord, when I die and I stand before you, I just want to hear you say, well done, good and faithful servant. I don't care if the rest of the world thinks that Father Larry was great or not great. The only thing I want is for the God of the universe to say, you did what I wanted you to do. And that's why every day I try, weak as I am, to look at that end goal in mind. That what I live for is a day I take my last breath and I stand before God in judgment. I want to hear Him say, well done, good and faithful servant.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and you. It's your show. Let's take it away here on a Monday broadcast. Thanks again to the show team, Rich, Matt, Jeff, everybody else behind the scenes who do such great work to air the show every day. Thank you, affiliates, for airing Take Two, and you, the listeners. And we have a couple of open phone lines there. Several people already screened. We'll get to at 1-800-585-9396, discussing self-criticism, criticism of others, when others criticize us. How do we balance all of this stuff and really make it a healthy experience?
Jerry, I was referencing earlier Matthew 7:5, where it says, you hypocrite, first take the plank out of your own eye, then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So it's a really, when you're talking about an examination of conscience, it's a really, it's necessary. It's necessary for us to do that, to really take inventory of ourselves first before we go out there and start criticizing others. So, yeah, Matthew 7:5, always a profound scripture passage. Okay, Sean got our First Up Award in Michigan, listening on Ave Maria Radio. Hi, Sean. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie.
Hi, guys. How are you today? Thank you for being out there and spreading the word. It's really great to be able to participate in Catholic radio.
Thank you, Sean. We're glad that you did.
So, I'd like to say that I totally agree that, we can't deny that scripture of plank in our eye. I think when we look back on Fatima and Akita, Our Lady of Akita, that's exactly what Our Lady is asking of us, is personal reformation and repentance. So, but I think that in our day and age, I'm a rather young man. I don't like saying that, but in terms of my current generation, I'm rather young, and I think that we have somewhat forgotten a good fear of God. I know I have, going through college. I think so. Just look at where we are. We're where the Nazis were, essentially, or where the communists wanted us to be in the late 18th century. We've got Sodom and Gomorrah in our lives, and I think that comes from a failure of us being self-critical of ourselves. That also means that we need to be aware of each individual's mission, struggles, the settings we're under. I think that our young generation or current generation that is participating in homosexuality or abortion, they're under attack. They're under spiritual attack just as much as they are possibly trying to go their own way rather than God's way. So if we're not self-critical enough, we go 100 years or more without the recognition of Fatima in our society. May I ask you guys a question? When was the first time you heard Fatima as a child, or even in your lifetime?
Debbie, for me, it was probably well into my 20s, because I didn't have a lot of religious formation growing up, and then had a reversion to the faith when I was in my mid-20s. So it was probably sometime after that.
And for me, Sean, I went to Catholic elementary school, so we learned about it very early on in our formation. So we were blessed like that. We had a very active parish, and so they constantly kept us, schooled in the faith and learning about the saints and learning about the apparitions. And I mean, so we were very blessed. But what was when you asked us that, what was your thought about that?
I think I went almost my whole life without knowing Fatima, even through Catholic schooling. We had a visitation of a replica of Our Lady of Fatima's statue. But if we don't have self-criticism, I think we fail to kind of almost feel the sorrow for the sins we've committed, or even recognize what the sins were. Mm-hmm. I'm reflecting just yesterday on the 10 Commandments, listening to a homily online, going through so many of sins that I had forgotten.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is, given where you guys may be based, I find that at least in Michigan, part of Michigan, not all parts of Michigan, there's, I don't know, I just feel that there's not an extensive amount of this good fear. I mean, how many, I can't even tell you how many people believe in purgatory anymore within the Catholic faith.
Sean,
not on the east side of Michigan, though, but that's my opinion.
Sean, let me ask you this question. You don't have to give us your exact age, but give me the age bracket you're in.
I'm 25.
Okay. All right. So you're exactly, I know where you're at because you're right between my two sons. I've got one son who's 28 and one son who's almost 22. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that in your generation. And what I mean by that is I can remember a lot of my son's friends coming over to the house and they would constantly say, don't put that guilt on me. I don't want that guilt. There's this real, trying avoidance of anything that is guilt-ridden. So you're not going to really tell me what to do. You're not going to say that's the right thing to do. Just let me be. And I agree with you, Sean. I think there's there's problems with that, because what that does is it allows you to kind of just wherever you're at that moment, then that seems right for you. There's not a real motivation to do necessarily the right thing. And so it's to me, it's kind of like wandering in the desert. I mean, guilt, this is my personal opinion, Sean, guilt can be a good motivator if it's used properly, not if you're guilting and shaming someone into doing something. That is not productive. But guilt can be a good thing. For instance, you've got an aging parent. Okay, what's the right thing to do? The right thing to do for a child is to do what you can to take care of that aging parent, whatever that is. Pray for that parent, physically take care of them, whatever. But some people would say, hey, don't guilt me into that. I have my own life. I've got a busy schedule. I don't have time to take care of mom or dad. Okay. And I agree with you, Sean. I think that's really problematic. And what's going to happen is eventually, like my mother always said, my wise 87-year-old mother, she says, what goes around comes around. Sometime your generation, unfortunately, is going to feel what it feels like for people not to do the right thing around you guys. But Sean, I think you can be an instrument of change for your age group. So what do you think about what I was sharing?
I think that you're absolutely correct as far as guilt trips go, and I think the number one thing is compassion. Christ did everything with compassion, even throwing out the coins that had bail on them, that the money exchangers were in the temple holding and stuff. He did that was an act of compassion. So as we continue to be self-critical, we have to keep the Lord's compassion in mind as long as we're putting forth every action or every piece of reparation fully, wholly, and trying to ensure that it stays that way. Maybe that's putting filters on your computer. Maybe that's not going out anymore with a certain group of friends, despite it being lonely to some extent. I don't know. That's just my opinion, and I think that you guys are opening up a lot of doors here for being on air, and I thank you for that. So,
Sean, I just want to add a couple of quick comments here, and then we'll get to Mabel and Jeff and the others on the line. I wonder if this points to an even deeper problem or issue than just that of being too critical of ourselves or others, and that is an inability to actually think critically. Debbie, we've talked about this on the show before. And Sean, I love your quick comments on that. I mean, you are in a generation right now that, we look around, and I wonder if because of whether it's the education or the culture or the peer pressure or just being lost in gadgets or whatever, if there's even maybe a diminished ability to think critically in terms of this is right versus this is wrong. I mean, I don't know, is that your experience? It sounds like you have you have that sorted out in your own head, but what do you think about your peers in that regard, Sean?
Every aspect of American culture within the media, there is a counter-revolution media, or should I say a restoration media floating about, but that's a response to us as Americans being under spiritual attack, whether that's magazines, that's movies, that's music. All of this comes back down to the late 19th century, early 20th century of communism. Communism is very still alive in the U.S. It's taken over our college, our universities. Whether the professors know that, recognize it or not, it's there. The U.S. Senate determined communism. They even attached a label to it as far as witchcraft or separation of marriage within the youth, participating in sex. It is completely our education system, as well working in tangent with our media.
Yeah.
That's my opinion, and that's where political correctness comes from. Political correctness is a weapon against the truth. Thank you.
Right. Well, Sean, thank you so very, very much. And you're a wise, wise man. And we're going to pray, because with young adults like you going out there and being leaders in the world, you're gonna make some great changes. So we're gonna pray. Please take two, family. Pray for Sean that he is given the opportunity to continue to spread the gospel message and to be strong against all those enemies around, because that's going to be there, because Satan wants to keep this going, Sean. Satan wants this to be a messed up culture, but with folks like you, Sean, you can make a difference. So we're going to be praying for you. God bless you. You're a beautiful soul. I'm so glad you called today.
Thank you, Sean. 1-800-585-9396. Take two with Jerry and Debbie, and your takes, your wisdom like that of Sean, your life experiences, your comments drive the program. So please do join us talking today about this idea of criticism and self-criticism for that matter. And just wanted to quickly, just remind, others and ourselves, Debbie, that I think there's a little bit of a distinction. Sean certainly brought up a good point that, we need to maybe be a little bit more critical of some of the things that are going on in the world around us. I think one of the aspects of this conversation that we wanted to have was, when we sort of hang on to or cling to these things, we make a little blunder or a little foible here and there, and we just kind of pounce on ourselves and pound and pound and pound and are overly critical and maybe aren't able to let that go. I think there's a little bit of a difference in those two types of being quote-unquote critical.
Right. I couldn't agree more. And Jerry, this is the thing. When it's very easy for human nature to focus on the negative. The negative is very obvious. Okay, it's super easy to pick out what is going wrong. It takes an intentional effort to really work on the things that are positive, the redeeming value of people and things. And so that is why we're having this conversation, because as Catholic Christians, we are called to a higher standard, and that is we are to make that extra effort. We're not to go for that low attack and just state the obvious. We're to help people rise to the best version of themselves, and that includes ourselves. And that is powerful when it comes to our spirituality, Jerry. And a lot of people get stuck in that critical phase. And that's not a good place to be, because the spiritual growth can't be, you can't really advance in a real wholesome way. And that's why we're having this conversation today. So jump in at 1-800-585-9396, just like Sean did. What a precious soul. 25 years old. Gosh, I wish he was my son. I would take him as a third son.
Yeah, thanks. All right, Mabel, hang on in Madison, Mississippi. It looks like Madison, Mississippi is what it says on here anyway. But Mabel, we're going to get to you. We just don't want to have to interrupt you here in just a moment. And we know that you've got a great contribution to make to our conversation. So you've been patient up until now, and we appreciate you being patient just another moment or two. And then we have Steve and others on the line after that. Again, 1-800-585-9396. And Debbie, I'm looking at my laptop screen. It says January 22nd. If my math is right, that gives us 9 days.
No.
9 days before we close registration for the Stand Tall retreat in Coleman, Alabama.
Wow. And we had several signups over the weekend. So if you want to get in on this retreat, please go to jerryanddebbie.com. Check out the agenda. Sign up for the retreat. We want to see you there. It's just a few weeks away, and we're going to be together and we're going to grow together. It's going to be life-changing. We're going to stand tall in a confident way, knowing that we're sons and daughters of God, fully loved. We're going to leave our past behind, and we're going to start 2018 because it's still relatively new in the year. And we're going to start 2018 right with a lot of self-awareness that we are strong before God. So Jerry, I love it. jerryanddebbie.com. Go visit it. Sign up for the retreat. We'll be right back.
Jumpstart your faith. Now coming to a parish conference or retreat near you, world-renowned Catholic radio host Jerry Usher.
It's not enough to stop doing whatever it is that's keeping you from union with God. For most of us, there are serious issues that need to be addressed first in order to be able to embrace that life of virtue. All those things we're all called to, but which every one of us struggles to achieve.
Invite Jerry Usher today. Contact thirdmillenniummedia.com.
Jesus called the Holy Spirit the Advocate. An advocate is one who builds you up. He's got your back, and he'll go to bat for you. The opposite of an advocate is an accuser. Revelation calls the devil the accuser. An accuser deflates you and rips you down. You are in the midst of an epic spiritual battle between the advocate and the accuser, and the battlefront is your mind. Have you been listening to the accuser who tells you you're broken and can't be fixed? Your marriage isn't worth fighting for. You don't matter. The whole story of your life is defined by the worst page. The advocate wants you to face today with the confidence and security that comes from knowing you're a beloved child of God, a God who has your best interest in mind and who has destined you for eternal glory. Which voice will you listen to? Whose side are you going to be on today? This is Chris Stefanik from RealLifeCatholic.com on EWTN Radio.
EWTN, teaching the truth.
Listening to your program has really touched my heart, and I just see such love and beauty, not only for Christ, but for people in general in the Catholic Church. And now I feel like I need more. I want to serve God more. I feel it so much that He's given me a gift to serve and to touch people, to love people. What would it take for me to maybe look into the priesthood?
EWTN. Live truth. Live Catholic.
Blessed day to you, starting off the week. Good to have you spending a little bit of that time this morning or early afternoon, wherever you happen to be, with Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Or if you're listening to the encore of the program, it could be late at night or early in the morning for you because it re-airs at midnight Eastern Time as well. 1-800-585-9396, talking about the topic of criticism. Are we too hard on ourselves sometimes? Maybe of others. Maybe we have others who just can't stop nagging at us. You know, how do we roll with that and still try and love and respect them? 800-585-9396. Okay, Mabel, thank you. We're going to give you the Patience Award today in Madison, Mississippi, listening on Sirius XM 130. Hi, Mabel. Thank you so much for holding on the line there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, great. Glad that you called.
Yes. Well, I'm at home, and I just happened to be off today, and I just turned in the EWTN, and I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to just get somebody else's opinion. I just came back from a retreat this weekend, and on the retreat, we talked about judgment, and I became familiar with this Enneagram that I'm not sure if you're familiar with, the classification. And But pretty much, the bottom line, the message on the retreat is how easy we are to judge people, to judge events in our lives. And the speaker, gave kind of an explanation of how people try to put any event into the good box or the bad box because of our tendency to judge events. And how we feel throughout our day if we feel like we put a lot of things in the good box, or how depressed we can become, or how sad we can become, or triggered we can become if we put a lot of things in the bad box. And the message at the end was how to look at these events as opportunities to avoid judging, to look at people with the lovely eyes, with the magic eyes, where we think like God, not judging, but just trying to understand that people behave out of their own pain and out of their own wounds. And so trying to get things out of the bad box and even the good box, and just try not to judge other events or other people. And then, of course, we had to touch the topic of how hard sometimes we judge ourselves. And that's when I heard about the Enneagram, and, I just quickly took the test the first night. And, when I was talking to the speaker, she said, well, you're clearly a type 1, and you're going to have a hard time not criticizing yourself, and that's why, you're so hard on other people, including your husband, your children, your coworkers, and everybody else around you. So, and again, I don't know how many people are familiar with this Enneagram, but in summary, the ones, and I'm just reading the description of the papers that I printed, the ones are the ones who want to be right, to have integrity and balance, to strive higher, to improve themselves. We want to be the saviors of the world, but, we have an extremely strong and loud inner critic that is relentlessly and constantly telling us what we did wrong and how to improve. Right. And at times, it says here, they can be judgmental and critical of others, telling them what they think is right. They behave this way because they truly want to help people avoid mistakes. They believe that others would appreciate their advice, and they're surprised when others are hurt or angry when receiving their helpful advice. To the one, there is only one way to do things, and it is the right way. Well, they feel that if something is worth doing, it is worth doing right.
Mabel, can I...
As a result, their own...
Right. Sure. Right. Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because we're familiar with that testing, but I wanted just to ask you a question. Was this a Catholic retreat you went on? May I ask that?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I'm not even sure if this Enneagram is something that is spoken at Catholic retreats, or it was with a local church here, and it was, I even asked the speaker if she was Catholic, but she said she was.
She was.
But again, it was not something that was taught during the retreat, but it was something that was discussed
I see
the
what you're
audience saying. And how many people were studying their Enneagrams. And I understand this is based on a personality test, so I didn't know, whether it was Catholic-based or not.
Right. First of all, and Jerry will address this a little bit more, we have to really be cautious of any type of testing like that, because it's not necessarily can be a good thing, especially for our spiritual growth. And as if you've listened to the show at all, like frequently, you'll hear me say that I'm very much against labels like that. And I'll tell you why, because I understand you can find your personality in almost any descriptive label. Okay. That's why so many people go to horoscopes. Okay. If you read a horoscope, you can find 1 or 2 things that relate to yourself, and you're thinking, wow, that's just like me. So I must be these other personality traits or these other things. And I'm not saying that it's, I'm not trying to say that whatever you tested, whatever type a personality you tested at isn't you. I'm just saying that is something that is very limiting. And we as Catholic Christians, we don't have to ever be bound by anything like that. And that's actually not beneficial to our spiritual growth. So what I would do, though, is if you know your own personality strengths and weaknesses. You don't need a test to tell you what box you're in, okay? What I would do, Mabel, is that you're not alone when it comes to being critical of others and yourself. We all struggle with that to some degree. The thing we are called to do is to get ourselves out of the comfort zone, make the effort to approach things in a different way. And when we do, it's practice makes permanent. I know everybody says practice makes perfect, but it's actually practice makes permanent. So we have to practice these things in order to be better Christians, to be Christ out in the world. So Jerry will discuss that testing, but I just wanted to kind of caution you with that, because I'm really, that I struggle with that terribly, because as a catechist, I always used to tell people stay far away from stuff like that. So Mabel, I just want to hear your comments on a few things I said, and then let's hear what Jerry has to say. What do you think?
Sure, and what I was going to say is I had the same exact questions when I heard about this testing, and I'm like, it gives you a list of your pros and your cons, and I'm like, how do you know if you don't have the pros of a type 1, type 2, and you don't have the cons of a type 4, type 5? How can they categorize you in just one box? But what I was just trying to mention is, and everything that I read on the brief description, it kind of fitted in my category. And I understand, personality tests can describe some of your features, but I don't agree, like you, that I want to be putting myself in one box, with every list and description of what are my pros and what are my cons. And I guess, just as a description of how hard or how tough on ourselves a type A personality or a type 1 on the Enneagram or whatever classification, or just a description of how perfectionist people, if we want to put it in just a small, in a single word, can be on ourselves. My question, I guess, is at the bottom line and at the end of the retreat is, sure, we can try to avoid judging other people, and it's going to be easier than judging ourselves. But, what we do, and I'm just going to speak for myself, what I do, it's because I know there's going to be a judgment at the end of the days. And, I want to say, good job, my son, my daughter, just like Father Larry was in on the ad. Right. Based on the parable of talents, based on so many other parables, we know that we're called to do the right thing. We know that we're called to holiness, to become saints. We know that there is something expected from us. And yes, we may feel to other people like the righteous one, like quote unquote, like the people who are the perfect, the people who are judging, the people who, but really and truly, we just want everybody to be better. But because of that, we tend to have higher expectations, because of the higher expectations that we put on ourselves. And even though that's just part of it's not just, it's our personality, and our goal is at the end to do the right thing and to please God. We know that, even if we try to become like God and embrace somebody who's making a mistake without trying to judge and all that, we know that at the end of the days we're going to be judged. So that's kind of my difficult part to understand, because I can say, oh, hey, it's good. I can take all this weight off of my shoulders and, not strive to have the perfect kids, the perfect life, the perfect everything. God is going to be good, and if He forgives other people, He's going to forgive me. But what happens at the end of the days when we have so much information in the Bible that tells us there's going to be a judgment, and you at the end will be judged?
Mabel, let me, if I can share a couple of comments here. First of all, I just want to affirm your beautiful heart, because you going to a retreat. That's why Debbie and I are having the Stand Tall retreat. And Debbie, you often say you encourage people to go on retreat a couple times a year. And Mabel, that's a sign that you are striving to be better, that you're striving to grow closer to God and deepen your prayer life and all of that. So kudos to you for that, and we certainly encourage you to continue taking that time away and just kind of removing yourself from the world and quieting yourself and letting God speak to you. A couple things about the Enneagram, and this is really just meant, not in any way to criticize you, Mabel, for having done this because you weren't aware of this, but the church has said many things, warning the faithful just about using tools like this. In fact, in February of 2011, I believe it was, Archbishop Thomas Wensky of Miami explained the Catholic teaching on the Enneagram and related subjects in an online column titled "New Age is Old Gnosticism." And he wrote that the Enneagram is, quote, a pseudo-psychological exercise supposedly based on Eastern mysticism, which introduces ambiguity into the doctrine and life of the Christian faith, and therefore cannot be happily used to promote growth in an authentic Christian spirituality. And here's a paragraph from an article that might be of interest to you, Mabel, and I think it speaks to what you're saying right now about the types that you identified yourself with and sort of focusing solely on those. It says, and this, by the way, is from Catholic World Report in January of 2012, it says, the Enneagram redefines sin, among other fundamental concepts, by simply associating faults with personality types, which is particularly tempting in a culture of irresponsibility and narcissism. Not saying that you are those things, Mabel. I'm saying this is what the article is saying about the culture at large. And it says the Enneagram encourages an unhealthy self-absorption about one's own type so that the type is at fault rather than the person. This gives rise to a deterministic mindset at odds with Christian freedom. So, Mabel, Debbie, I think you would join me again in just affirming her search for being, the best version of herself, and just really let God reveal to you, what your type is, and what He made you for, and why He made you, and who you are in His eyes. Mabel, I don't know, Debbie, did you want to?
No, I just want, Jerry, I'm glad you quoted that. Thank you so much. And Mabel, I just real quickly, I wanted just to hear your final thoughts on this, but remember this, God knows your heart. And Jerry said at the very beginning, Mabel, you have a beautiful heart. God sees your effort and he reads your heart. Okay. And that's very, very important. And we forget all that. We want systems in place and all these things told to us on how to perform a certain way so that we can get to heaven. Of course, we all want to get to heaven. Who wants to go to hell? I've never met anybody that actually said they want to go to hell. Okay. We want to get to heaven. God reads our hearts. So I just want you to just look bigger at that, rather than getting weighed down with these tests that put you in things that you're trying to overanalyze things. Does that help at all, Mabel?
I wasn't even sure of believing in this classification myself, and I just didn't have time to investigate to see exactly if it was Christian-based or Catholic-based, classification or anything like that. But my point was, and like I said, call it perfectionist, type 1, type A, or whatever. My conflict comes down to how are we going to be judged at the end of the days? And yes, it does help me to know, and thank you, Jerry, for giving me that explanation. Like I said, I haven't even had that time to do the research. I just came back yesterday. But it's good. I always find it very useful. I mean, I was very surprised when I heard something about the yoga and the mindfulness on the Women of Grace program and how they can. You just have to be careful. Things that I've done in the past without realizing. That I just had to be careful,
Right.
And so
you know what, Mabel? Let me address that if I may, because see, you go into a retreat, open-minded, and especially if it's a Catholic retreat, and you have a right to be given authentic Christian spirituality. You possess that right, and I know for a fact that there are many, many retreat centers and priests and religious and lay people and religious orders and what have you that are really foisting this kind of bogus, spirituality and these Eastern philosophies that are at odds with authentic Christian spirituality on the faithful and Mabel. And that was, they did violence to you actually in doing that. You like you said, you didn't do the research. You know what? You shouldn't have to do that. But unfortunately, we live in times when sometimes that is required. And so now, it's been a good learning experience for you, Mabel. And I'm sure there were good elements of what you experienced at the retreat and that you took away from that. And I think, Debbie, it's very providential that she called today. And this is really going to help her moving forward to really be able to, tap into those resources that are going to genuinely help her. And she can point others to them as well. So anyway, Mabel, we got to get to some other calls here. Deb, I don't know if you wanted to
No, I just want to
tie that
thank
up
you
in any way.
again. Yeah, thank you again, Mabel, for calling in. And just about the perfectionist mentality. Many of us have that. And we have to work really hard we have to work hard on being gentle with ourselves. Okay, understand that let our heart lead. God sees our heart. He sees we're trying to do the best we can. And when we look at others' souls, let's try to remember that they're souls. And if we can do that, we can maybe kind of take away some of that perfectionist attitude. I know that has worked for me, Mabel. I hope that helps you. You're a good woman, okay? You want to get to heaven, and that's awesome. And God delights in that. And so He'll put in your path wonderful ways for you to experience life so that you can grow in holiness. That's what this world is. It's a training ground. So I love your call, Mabel. Thank you so very much. God bless you. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Steve, you know what? Oh, wait. Can I just say something before we get to Steve real quickly? Because, Jerry, you had referenced a couple online articles, and I just want to say there's another online service that is right at our fingertips, and I just wanted to highlight it for a moment. The Catholic News Agency is the fastest, reliable, free Catholic news source that brings blogs and stories and opinions and more right at our fingertips. And I just love that when you can just jump on the computer and get the latest in Catholic news. And I think it's really important for all of us to do that. So please, folks, visit CatholicNewsAgency.com. It's an online service from EWTN News. So you know it's authentic, you know it's good, it's reliable, it's a trusted source. Go to CNA. That's CatholicNewsAgency.com.
Okay, back to your calls on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Steve is in Davisburg, Michigan, listening today on Ave Maria Radio. Hi, Steve. Thank you for your patience and welcome to the program.
Hi, can you hear me?
Very well, thank you.
Well, listen, I wanted to thank you and Debbie for the show, Jerry. It's an awesome show. I had one quick comment. I was listening to Sean speak, and I was absolutely blown away by this 25-year-old with such wisdom that's beyond what the world would call wisdom. I mean, God has really enlightened this young man's mind. And when in a comment he made about, in the universities about how maybe some of the professors and things like that may not even be realized, some of this communism that they're promoting. He said it with such charity, but it just reminded me of, the first martyr, Stephen, who was going up against the greatest intellectual minds at that time, and they could not refute him. So I prayed for Sean. I prayed that God continue to just bless him, and because he's really bringing the light of the truth into the world. And then also I just got back from the March for Life, and man, what a great blessing. So that was those were my comments.
Well, real quick, I'll comment on your call, but was that your first time, or have you been to the March for Life before, Steve?
This was my fourth trip down there.
Fourth, okay. Wow, good for you. Good for you. Well,
yeah, I took the bus out of Immaculate Conception Church out of Lapeer. So the people that I rode with, Jim, the guy that organizes it, and everybody, I was just so blessed with so many graces, man. So what a great movement.
No doubt. Yeah, I made two trips to March for Life when I was attending Franciscan University there in Steubenville. But I want to, something I think I mentioned during Sean's call, Steve, and you reminded me of it again, and that is just, unfortunately, I think we have a culture, especially younger generations today, who they're not being given the skills to think critically. I mean, I don't know why. Some people call it a dumbing down or whatever, but when a lot of our young people get onto college campuses, and this is why, it's so important for Catholic parents to solidify the faith of their kids and try and choose a good hopefully a Catholic college if they can afford one. But I think, Debbie, sometimes, kids just go into college and university classrooms, and there's this implicit respect of the professors and the leaders and all of this, that whatever they say is going to be true and it's going to be helpful in all of that. And there are so many different philosophies that are out there that a simple little investigation would prove that a lot of what's being taught is either politically correct, or it's not right, or it's immoral, or whatever. I think it boils down to, can young people today, put two and two together and come out with the right answer? And a lot of times, I don't know, they seem to lack the ability, or else just don't think that that's necessary, that critical thinking.
The professors are very convincing. I went to a liberal university, and they're very convincing. I had a lot of my classmates all of a sudden turn to me and start doubting their belief systems, because these professors were very convincing. So I think Sean, I agree with you, Steve. Sean is an awesome kid. I'd like to adopt him as my third child. He's amazing. But we need to pray for him. He's got to be strong out there. He's probably not going to have a lot of friends, okay, because he's going against the culture, but he's a leader. He's a leader, and we just need to support him. But Steve, I just wanted to say, God bless you for going to the March for Life so many times, and what a great turnout. And it must have been so enlightening and inspiring and encouraging to see everybody with the same passion as you have, Steve. So thank you so much for representing all of us. We really appreciate it.
Well, like I said, it was a great blessing. I met a hero down there, woman, my friend Jeff and I came across this lady, and she's an older lady having trouble getting her coat into her handbag, and so we helped her with it. And she's been going down there for 45 years. She wasn't moving too quick, but I was just, like I said, what a hero. I told her, I said, you're a hero. Her name was Anne Marie. And, and then just, everybody's legs and feet and back are just screaming on fire, but it was like, wow, what a blessing in the midst of, a little bit of suffering that we go through. And, but anyway, it was great. And Jerry, your comment about critically thinking, I listened to Father Ricardo too, and, he said, that's the point of our education system, is to teach kids to critically think. Here's the information, critically think about it. But anyways, I appreciate you guys taking my phone call. Thank you, and God bless you for your show.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
Always
you,
great
Steve.
to have you listening, and thanks so much for participating. Wow, Debbie, amazing!
A great show.
Yeah, amazing insights again from our listeners, and I just love the fact that so many people feel at ease calling in and contributing to whatever conversation that we put out there, and I'm always blown away. And Steve and Sean and Mabel and all the others today were just fantastic.
Well, I take notes, and I'm on my 20th notebook. I have 19
right.
put away in files. But I'll tell you what, I learned so very much from our Take Two family, because you guys drive the show. So please remember that when we ask you to call in, we need you to call in. And tomorrow we have planned, we titled it God's View. God's View. Jerry, help me out on this. Did I pick this topic? I did.
You did, yeah.
Do you know what the synopsis is? Because I like the title.
Yeah. Well, we're going to ask the question, how does God see you? It actually kind of relates a little bit to today's topic.
And stand tall.
That's right.
Wow, I like that topic. I'm really proud of myself.
Well, and again, we're not perfect. We walk the best walk that we can, but we sometimes need to reflect a little bit on how does God see me? How do I see myself in light of how God might see me? So that's our conversation tomorrow. Be thinking and praying about that overnight, dear listeners, and please participate.
I can't wait for tomorrow now. I'm excited. I wish we could start it right now. Okay, so if you want to ever email us, you can email us at take2, the number 2 at EWTN.com. But more importantly than that, visit jerryanddebbie.com. If you can do that, you can check out the retreat agenda. Maybe you can go on it, tell a friend about it. Like Jerry said, I think 9 days left, and then we close the retreat. We want to see you there. We want to get to know you better. We want to put a face to the voices that we hear. jerryanddebbie.com. Visit it today, and please try to sign up.